Let us forget about becoming rich for a moment. Forget private jets, forget luxury watches, forget social media fantasies about financial freedom by 30. I want to talk about a number that sounds painfully ordinary. Not 1 million, not even 100,000. I want to talk about $25,000, because in real life, for an ordinary person, that number can matter more than the first million ever will. Why? Because the first million is about scale. But the first $25,000 is about stability. It is the number where life begins to stop bullying you. It is the number where every inconvenience stops feeling like a full-blown emergency. It is the number where you stop making decisions with your back against the wall. Most people misunderstand money because they look at it only through the lens of status. They think money is about buying better things, a better car, a better apartment, a better vacation, a better looking life. But the first meaningful chunk of money is not about looking better. It is about becoming harder to break. That is the real purpose of your first serious savings. To understand this, imagine two people. They are the same age. They earn roughly the same income. They have the same rent, the same bills, the same responsibilities. But one of them has $800 in the bank. The other has $25,000. Now let life do what life always does. A medical bill shows up. The car needs repair. The company starts cutting staff. The landlord raises the rent. The child needs something unexpectedly expensive. A tooth starts hurting. A phone breaks. A mistake happens. To the first person, these are disasters. To the second person, they are annoying. And that difference right there changes everything. That is what most people fail to understand. Wealth does not begin when you can impress people. Wealth begins when problems stop controlling your behavior. That is why this video is not about getting rich fast. This video is about crossing the line between survival and choice. Because once you cross that line, the rest of the game becomes very different. Not easy, but different, and better. I want to show you why life below this number is more fragile than most people realize. There is a hidden tax on being financially weak, and no government collects it. Life does. When your savings are near zero, everything becomes more expensive. You pay late fees because you cannot pay on time. You buy cheap products that wear out faster, so you keep replacing them. You take whatever deal is in front of you because you cannot afford to wait for a better one. You tolerate bad jobs because you cannot afford a transition. You ignore small health problems because you cannot afford prevention, and later they become expensive emergencies. This is one of the cruelest truths about money. When you have no cushion, life charges you more for everything. Not always in dollars, sometimes in stress, sometimes in lost time, sometimes in humiliation, sometimes in bad decisions made under pressure. And those bad decisions are not always the result of bad character. Often they are simply the result of being trapped. When someone is constantly worried about bills, rent, food, debt, and emergencies, their thinking changes, their horizon shrinks. They stop asking what is the best move over the next 5 years, and start asking, how do I survive the next 5 days? That is not weakness. That is what fear does to the human brain. A person under constant financial pressure is not thinking strategically. They are thinking tactically, emotionally, urgently. This is why people who live close to the edge often appear inconsistent. They want one thing long-term, but do the opposite short-term. They say they want peace, but make chaotic decisions. They say they want freedom, but keep spending in ways that trap them. They say they want to invest, but keep touching every dollar, because life never stops demanding from them. Why? Because when you are fragile, your money is never really yours. It already belongs to the next emergency. That is why the first serious savings goal is not glamorous. It is defensive. It is not designed to make you rich. It is designed to make you resilient. And resilience is where wealth begins. Not because resilience makes you look successful, but because resilience makes it possible for your future decisions to finally matter. If every month is chaos, your intelligence is wasted. If every surprise becomes a crisis, your discipline gets drained. If one mistake can destroy you, you are not building a future. You are just dodging bullets. That is why your first $25,000 matters so much. It may not look impressive online, but in real life, it changes the physics of your existence. Before that number, you live exposed. After that number, life can still hit you, but it does not hit you the same way. Most people do not lack talent. They lack the ability to refuse. That is a very different problem. People like to talk about confidence as if it comes from mindset. Sometimes it does. But very often, confidence comes from cash reserves. The world becomes a different place when you are no longer terrified of the consequences of saying no. No to unpaid overtime. No to disrespectful treatment. No to bad clients. No to panic-based decisions. No to jobs that slowly kill your spirit. No to desperate deals. No to manipulative people who know you have no margin. When you are financially weak, your standards collapse under pressure. Not because you do not have values, but because values are expensive when you cannot afford a gap in income. That is why so many people stay in situations that are obviously bad for them. It is not always laziness. It is not always low ambition. It is not always fear of change. Sometimes it is simple arithmetic. If missing one paycheck creates disaster, then freedom is an illusion. You are not choosing. You are complying. But once you build that first real cash buffer, something subtle happens inside you. Your voice changes, not always outwardly, internally. You become calmer, less eager to please, less easy to threaten, less likely to rush. You start evaluating things instead of reacting to them. That is one of the first invisible luxuries money gives you. It gives you space between an event and your response. And in that space lives dignity. Think about a person with no savings. Their boss makes an unreasonable demand. They already know the answer before the conversation even starts, because they cannot risk conflict. Now think about a person with 6 months of breathing room. Same boss, same demand, different psychology. Now there is room to think. Now there is room to negotiate. Now there is room to say, "This does not work for me." That sentence is priceless. And it becomes possible only when money stops owning your nervous system. People often think freedom is dramatic, that it looks like quitting your job, moving to another country, starting a company, doing something big and cinematic. But in real life, freedom often begins with something much smaller. Freedom is when you do not panic. Freedom is when you can wait. Freedom is when you can walk away. That first $25,000 will not make you rich, but it will begin to make you unpushable. And that matters more than people realize, because from that point forward, you stop being available for every form of nonsense. And when nonsense stops filling your life, good decisions finally have room to grow. People love the idea of compound interest. They talk about it as if it is a magic spell. Put your money to work. Let your investments grow. Start early. Time in the market beats timing the market. All true, but there is something people conveniently skip over. Compounding is powerful only after you have built enough mass for it to matter. If you invest tiny amounts while your financial life is still unstable, the returns are mathematically correct, but emotionally irrelevant. Let us be honest. If you somehow earn 10% on $1,000, you made $100. That is nice, but it does not change your life. It does not change your rent. It does not change your stress. It does not change your options. It does not change your ability to handle emergencies. It is financially positive and practically insignificant. Now, let us say you have $25,000. A normal market return over time starts becoming visible. Now your money can produce movement, not fantasy, not instant riches, movement. More importantly, once you have that base, the real power of compounding begins to work on 2 levels. The first level is obvious. Your money starts generating more money. The second level is deeper. Your life becomes stable enough that you stop interrupting the process. That is the part people overlook. Most people do not fail at compounding because they pick the wrong fund. They fail because they keep touching the seed. They invest, then withdraw. They save, then spend. They build, then reset. They start, then life knocks them backward. Compounding does not just require time. It requires continuity. And continuity requires a buffer. That is why the first serious savings threshold is so important. It creates the conditions in which compounding can finally survive. Before that, every dollar is too exposed. After that, some dollars can finally remain untouched long enough to mature. This is the point where money becomes less like water slipping through your fingers and more like a growing tree. Still small at first, still unimpressive, but now rooted. And once something is rooted, time becomes your ally. This is also the stage where people make a dangerous mistake. They become impatient. They look at a modest return and feel insulted by it. So they go hunting for explosive gains. Cryptomania, options, leverage, speculative trades, hot tips from people who look rich online. Why? Because slow growth feels emotionally unsatisfying when your starting base is still modest. But that impatience is deadly. The whole point of your first $25,000 is not to turn it into a miracle. The point is to turn your life into a system that no longer collapses easily. That is what this threshold is for. Not excitement, stability, not a jackpot, a foundation. And if you respect that, then compounding can finally begin doing what people always promise it can do. Not overnight, but relentlessly. Most people do not lose financially because they never make progress. They lose because they celebrate progress in the most destructive way possible. This is the trap. You struggle. You sacrifice. You say no. You work extra hours. You cut spending. You save patiently. You finally build real cash. And then your brain whispers a sentence that has ruined more futures than almost any market crash ever could. I deserve this. Now, understand me carefully. There is nothing wrong with enjoying life. There is nothing wrong with rewarding yourself. But there is a massive difference between a reward and a reset. And most people do not know the difference. A dinner can be a reward. A weekend away can be a reward. A small, controlled celebration can be a reward. But a new car, a luxury purchase, a giant lifestyle jump, a flashy vacation funded by your entire buffer is not a reward. That is a reset disguised as self-respect. The most dangerous moment in your financial life is not always when you are broke. Sometimes it is when you finally have enough money to do something stupid, because now temptation becomes logical. Now you can say, I can afford it. And technically, yes, maybe you can. But only by destroying the exact thing that was about to protect your future. This is especially dangerous with cars, because cars are emotional. They signal progress. They let you feel like you have arrived. But for many people, the first big unnecessary vehicle upgrade becomes the execution of their financial momentum. They convert savings into depreciation, freedom into monthly payments, breathing room into fixed obligations. And once obligations rise, refusal power disappears. Now the person who is about to become stronger goes right back to dependence. That is why you must understand this rule. The first serious pile of money is not spending money. It is strategic money. It has a mission. Its mission is to remove fragility from your life. If you spend it on appearance, you keep the appearance and lose the mission. And the tragedy is that the world will applaud you while you do it. People love visible success. They respect signs much more than substance. A person with a financed luxury car will often look richer than a person with cash reserves and no debt. But appearances do not reduce stress. Appearances do not create options. Appearances do not protect your family. That is why a financially intelligent person often looks less successful than a financially reckless one, at least in the early stages. And that requires emotional strength, because you will feel out of step with the world. People may mock your restraint. They may say you are too cheap, too cautious, too boring. Let them. Boring is underrated. Boring is what allows the future to happen. The truth is, your first serious savings should feel almost sacred, not because money itself is sacred, but because of what that money represents. It represents time. It represents effort. It represents discipline. It represents pain converted into possibility. Do not trade possibility for applause. That is a terrible exchange. If you can protect this first base of stability, then you are ready for the next stage. Once you reach this threshold, most people ask the wrong question. They ask, what should I buy? Wrong question. The better question is, how should this money be organized so it increases my future strength? That is the real game. Your first serious pile of money should have jobs. Not one job, several jobs, and they are not equal. The first job is protection. A portion of this money must remain liquid and boring. Call it an emergency fund. Call it a buffer. Call it financial oxygen. I do not care what you call it. Just do not touch it unless life truly demands it. This is the money that keeps accidents from becoming disasters. It prevents forced selling. It prevents panic borrowing. It prevents bad timing. It protects your decision-making. This money is not lazy. It is guarding the fortress. The second job is long-term ownership. A portion of your money should start working quietly in productive assets. Nothing dramatic, nothing sexy, nothing that requires you to check prices every 14 minutes. Broad, low-cost, long-term exposure is enough for most people. The purpose here is not excitement, it is participation in long-term growth. The third job is the most overlooked of all, income expansion. This is where a lot of people make a huge mistake. They think every extra dollar must go into the market. Not necessarily. Sometimes the highest return available to you is not in stocks. It is in your own earning power, a certification, a practical course, a skill upgrade, better language ability. a tool that helps you produce more, a setup that supports a side business, training that moves you into a higher paid category. When people are broke, even good self-investment feels risky because failure becomes dangerous. But when you have a buffer, you can finally make asymmetric bets on yourself. That is powerful. $1,000 invested into a useful skill that raises your monthly income by even a modest amount can outperform many traditional investments, because increased earning power does not just add money, it accelerates the speed of your next milestone. And that is the real mission now. Your mission is no longer to escape chaos. You have done that. Now your mission is to build momentum toward $100,000. Why that number? Because at that level, the machine starts becoming loud, not magical, but undeniable. The returns become noticeable. The optionality expands. The fear keeps shrinking. The system starts supporting itself. But let me give you 3 warnings for this stage. First, do not use leverage. Borrowed money looks attractive when you finally feel more confident. Ignore the temptation. Leverage turns time against you, and time is your greatest ally. Second, do not chase complexity. Most financial complexity is not intelligence, it is marketing. If you cannot explain the investment simply, you probably should not be in it. Third, do not inflate your lifestyle at the same speed your savings grow. This is how people stay trapped, even while earning more every year. Every raise becomes an upgraded standard. Every improvement creates a new obligation. Every success becomes a new expense. And the person who thought they were climbing ends up running on a more expensive treadmill. Protect your gap. That gap between what you earn and what you spend is the engine of your future. Guard it fiercely. A lot of people think money changes your lifestyle only when your lifestyle becomes visibly different. That is not true. Some of the most important financial improvements are invisible from the outside. No one sees them, but you feel them every day. You sleep better. You speak more calmly. You stop flinching every time your phone rings. You stop feeling dread every time an email arrives. You become less irritable with the people you love, less reactive, less cornered. You stop carrying that permanent background panic that so many adults silently live with. That is one of the biggest dividends your first $25,000 pays. It lowers the emotional temperature of your life. And that matters more than people think. Stress is expensive, not only financially, biologically, relationally, mentally. It affects your patience, your health, your focus, your confidence, your marriage, your parenting, your creativity, your ability to think long term. So when someone says, it is just $25,000, what can that really do? The answer is more than they understand. Because it does not just buy things, it buys a different internal experience of life. And if you use it correctly, it also changes your identity. Before this stage, money tends to feel like a master. It commands, it threatens, it interrupts, it humiliates. After this stage, if handled wisely, money begins to feel like a servant, a tool, a shield, a quiet partner. That is a profound shift. And once you feel that shift, you start understanding something important. The purpose of money is not consumption. The purpose of money is control over time, behavior, and attention. If money only helps you look successful, it has done very little. If money helps you become calmer, freer, and harder to manipulate, then it is doing its real job. That is wealth in its early form. Not glamour, not excess, not ego. Just a growing sense that your life is no longer one unexpected bill away from disorder. And that is a beautiful thing. So let us close with this. If you have not reached this threshold yet, do not be ashamed. Do not compare your beginning to someone else's highlight reel. Do not let flashy people on the internet distort your sense of progress. A person building real stability quietly is doing something noble, something difficult, something that can change an entire family's future. And if you have already reached this number, then treat it with respect. Do not waste it trying to look upgraded. Use it to become harder to break. Use it to think longer. Use it to move from reaction to strategy. Use it to buy back your ability to say no. Because the first serious money you save is not important for what it can purchase. It is important for what it prevents. Panic, desperation, bad timing, humiliation, fragility. And once those begin to leave your life, your future stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like something you can actually shape. That is when the real game begins, not when you get rich, when you stop being weak. And for many people, that transformation begins not with $1 million, but with a quiet, boring, life-changing $25,000. If this message found you at the right moment, then make this practical. Write down your current number. Write down the exact milestone you are chasing. And write down one thing you are willing to stop doing so you can get there faster. Because vague intentions do not change lives, precise decisions do. And one day, when you finally cross that threshold, you will realize something surprising. The number mattered, but the person you became while reaching it mattered even more.